All right. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to the very important CxO Global Forum podcast, the live webinar that we are doing. My name is Lorelaine. I'm doing this after some time, but the topic was such that we wanted that we have an industry discussion on what the Pakistan Budget 2023 holds in store for the IT industry. I am so pleased that we have a very eminent panel in front of us, जिनसे आप बात कर सकते हैं, उनसे पूछ सकते हैं, उनकी एडवाइस ले सकते हैं, उनका पर्सपेक्टिव जान सकते हैं कि जो आईटी इंडस्ट्री है उसका फ्यूचर पोस्ट द बजट दैट हैज जस्ट बीन रिलीज्ड, व्हाट डज इट मीन. So consider this as a post-budget documentary, as a commentary, but we are just going to focus on what it means for the tech industry. I have with me Faisal Malik, who is a member of our CxO Global Forum. So Faisal, if you can say hello to everybody who's joining us online so that we know that everybody knows us and sees us.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum and hello to everyone.
Welcome, Faisal. We were joined with Shoaib Malik, who's the CEO and co-founder of TechRove Digital. Assalamu alaikum, Shoaib.
जी शोएब अकमल टेक्रो डिजिटल.
TechRove Digital. Thank you for joining us. And we are completing the panel. We have Khurram Rahat, who's the Senior Country Director of Uniphonic. Assalamu alaikum, Khurram Saab.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure to be here. And in addition to my hat as the country director of Uniphonic, I'm also vice chairman of Pakistan Software Houses Association. Pleased to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We're going to dive into the discussion very soon, but let me paint a picture a little bit. हर दफ़ा जून का महीना थोड़ा सा हमारे मुल्क के लिए सख्त भी होता है, थोड़ा सा anticipated भी होता है. This time around with the ongoing economic condition of the world and of the country specifically, and also looking at the fact that there's a global economic recession that the world overall is foreseeing. So technology as a sector always comes across as the heartbeat of it. So there are some, those of you who might not have seen the budget, for them just to give you an overview of what provisions have been set in place for the budget this time around, is that there's increased funding for digital infrastructure, which is approximately rupees 100 billion for the development of digital infrastructure, which means more broadcast internets, fiber optic networks, and data centers are scheduled to be set up. There's always a discussion around tax incentives. For tech-based startups, this has been a long-standing discussion, and this time around we do see that the budget has provision for tax breaks for tech startups, and there is a 3-year exemption also from income tax and a reduction in the corporate tax rate as well. So it serves both the freelancers, and if you're going into the tech space as a startup owner, as a founder, then there is some tax rebates that we can see. Then there is support for the development of new technologies, and the budget allocated for this is around rupees 5 billion, in which I would want the three gentlemen to also focus for the larger perspective, and as a means of this particular webinar, to also look at the fact that what future technologies are we looking at, and where's the world going ahead, and where should Pakistan be seen to place itself in this sphere. We see that there is also talks around the establishment of a national technology fund. Again, there is budget allocation on this, which is around rupees 10 billion. What it's going to do and what kind of research then that this particular fund takes place, that is going to be essential. And as industry experts, I would want your answers and your suggestions for this. Finally, I think there are a couple of things also, but these two points, the last 2 points, were always on the agenda of the government. When we see the Pakistan Vision 2025, Digital Pakistan was always there. This time around, it speaks about creating an authority which is going to be called the Digital Pakistan Authority, which will be responsible for overseeing the overall digital infrastructure and what it means in terms of expansion. Again, a relaunch, I would say, of the digital skills development program, in which the target is that 10 million Pakistani youth would be trained on the digital skills, which seems like an extension of the DigiSkills program that has been running for some time. So, in a nutshell, the best that I could do in the 3 minutes was to just give you an overview. But let me now open up the discussion and I'll move on to each one of you. Shoaib, we'll start off with you. In terms of understanding, there's a lot of discussion now. What do these tax provisions and what do these suggestions that have specifically taken place for the taxpayer? What does it mean again for the corporate side of things? So people like yourself who are actually running tech organizations, what does it mean for you? How excited are you as a practitioner that this is going to bring some positivity in the work that you're doing?
Thank you, Norolan. So I think when I look at this overall, I kind of divide it into three areas, right? So I look at it and I say, okay, so in this budget, what are some of the incentives or what is it in the budget that is helping grow the IT industry? That is number one. And then I look at, okay, what is it in the budget that is actually helping us or is increasing the ease of doing business in the IT industry. So that is number two. And I think the third one is, is there anything that is helping us with improving our cost of doing business? So these three categories, if you kind of look into those sort of three categories, I see that the budget actually is very good. You mentioned some of those aspects that there's been funding allocated for growth of IT industry. The VC fund, I think, is very interesting. 5 billion allocated. How this is actually going to be distributed. That it can actually be a very good thing. The digital infrastructure, I think, is very important. So I'm happy to see that there's a big amount allocated for improving the internet connectivity and digital infrastructure and 4G networks and fiber optics and all of that. So I think that is very needed. Coming specifically on the tech side of things, right, which is I would say is more in line of ease of doing business and cost saving. I think there are several things that are welcome steps for freelancers. Those are small, individuals who are working, hustling and getting projects, and those, we have a lot of freelancers in Pakistan. So there's good news for them. uh, you know, uh, so they don't have to file any. So up to a certain amount, I think it's 24,000. They don't have to file any tax. They don't file any sales tax. So that's less paperwork for them, which gives them, they can focus more on the business side of things. Their income tax returns are simplified now. So I think those are welcome steps. It helps those people. And what I'd like to see is these steps actually help these people move from freelancer status to actually organized agencies and coming to the mainstream where they can set up corporations and start working together and move on from freelancer to the next category. I think this is a good step in that direction. For companies like us, who are export oriented, I think the welcome thing over there is that there are no surprises. Because previously in the last 2 3 years, if you go back in history, right, there have been a lot of changes in how the government is taxing. First of all, it was no tax, 0% tax, and then that was changed in 2021. In 2022, it was changed again. So now it is continuation of what was done in 2022. So there's a 0.25. They call it the FTR, final tax regime. So all your exports are taxed at a flat rate of 0.25%, which is good. I would still like to see it go back to where it was originally, where it's not taxed at all. But again, just the fact that there are no huge changes there, that's a welcome thing. And I think that is one thing. And one last thing I'd like to say, one of the important things is that there have been some incentives, especially when it comes to importing equipment. That has been a big issue, because our business, we don't require machinery, we don't require a lot of infrastructure. All we require are laptops, and we require human capital, right? So I see that there are provisions to help both. There is provision to train IT resources, which is very well needed, and then there are provisions to actually help ease this, bringing in laptops, other IT equipment, that is needed for the IT industry. So this is welcome. Overall, I would say that for IT was actually front and center in this budget, which was very good news. that in the top two or three industries that the government outlined, agriculture was, one of them, IT was one of them. So it's good to see that IT is getting the recognition at the federal level, and actually money is being allocated as well. I would like to see that, actually all of this comes to fruition as well by the time, this whole year passes, that this is disbursed properly, and it actually brings in the value that everybody's expecting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shoaib. I think very holistically covered the different aspects that we're looking at. Faisal, I'll move now to you. Is this a point where we now look at more organizations diversifying the portfolio? I know that there's always been this talk around conventional processes being transformed, and we speak about digital transformation as well. Do you foresee that looking at the budget and the provisions that have been set up? Do you think that more organizations, mainstream organizations that were a little bit slow on their digital transformation, are now going to embrace it?
Thank you. But you see, I think just because Shoaib Saab ne, you gave a very good background in terms of what some good things that the government has initiated on, or at least proposed for the budget this year. They're very good initiatives, and no doubt, technology is one of those sectors. Including, I would say, construction is another sector where the government has given some relief or had put some focus on, including agri and SME businesses. I don't think so. I'm not sure whether that will accelerate the pace of transformation within organizations generally, but it will certainly help technology companies to focus more on increasing exports. You see, how does government work? Government starts with the overall objective first. So let's say if currently the technology contribution is 1% of the overall in the overall GDP of the country. So if we have to increase it, let's say by 30%, which they have targeted for next year, that they have to take the exports or the remittance in proceeds to up to $5 billion versus 3.7 or $3.8 billion last year. So if that's the objective, then obviously they have to start focusing on the sector whole, as a whole. And whether that will translate into the digitalization of the economy generally may or may not happen. Some parts would accelerate. For instance, if there is going to be a lot of spend on the infrastructure side, from the technology infrastructure side, like broadband, penetration, other digital infrastructure that is needed, then certainly that will help some of the industries or some of the sectors which are shying away from transformation or digital transformation. They may get onto the highway. But I think now, in this time and era, when we have seen the benefits of technology and adoption or transformation or digitalization post COVID, no one can deny the benefits of it. No one can say that we will, as an industry or as an organization, will stay out of it. Some form they have to be on this highway. And please remember that digitalization is a means to an end. It is not the end itself. So while I agree with some of the analysis that a lot of these research houses and some associations have developed around technology, but I'm not that convinced that just by creating a fund or allocating a fund or having a wishful target of achieving 30% more exports this year alone through technology, and giving ourselves a target, a very steep target of training, let's say up to 5 million people, as you mentioned in your introduction, skill development and training of 5 million people, etc. It all will result, it can only benefit if the operating plan or the details are then shared, that as to how you will achieve all of this. We are talking about a venture capital fund. $5 billion been rupees have been allocated for this venture development fund. uh, but creating another authority for it, is that going to solve anything or probably create more problems? Because the moment we create an authority or an organization, unless it needs to be regulated, we create bureaucracy and red tapeism. So I would suggest that use the infrastructure that we have, use the organizations that we have across the network already there for skill development, for venture capital. There are a lot of private companies already existing, managing these funds professionally, and just allocate these funds to those organizations. Keep an eye on it as to how they're spending it, but don't create organizations, don't create new expenditure based organization when you next year we'll be talking about more budgets to support them. These concepts of infrastructure parks and these technology parks, I am not in favor of it at all, because this doesn't make sense. Because what are we creating? As you said, for technology, what do we need? We need a laptop, we need humans, we need internet connectivity. That's primarily what your raw materials are. If you create technology parks, what are you trying to provide to them? So I think the focus should be on ease of business, on creating or reducing hassles for businesses, for export related businesses, technology businesses, to be able to export their services. And it should also be around the upliftment of the skills generally, and the availability of skilled workforce within the country. How we will be able to do that? Right now there is a brain drain going on. Forget technology, general brain drain is happening. So I think the devil isn't going to be in the details when we see the real operating plan coming out of these visual
Yeah.
numbers. And then probably the industry experts or the associations and the other such organizations can sit down with the government. I mean, they should sit down right now and develop those operating plans, so that these great visions or desires can be translated into actions. So, in a nutshell, I'm not saying that this budget is not great. It is positive. It is positive as an industry, but um, generally all budgets are at this stage. But it all depends at what results these numbers, these fanciful or wishful thinking drive. So I
Yeah.
will still remain a little skeptical in when it comes to execution, or ability to execute.
Great. No, thank you so much, Faisal Saab. I think this was the kind of like an objective overview that we really wanted, and I completely agree with you that plans that are put up on papers without a duplication of effort of creating more verticals in which organizations and more organizations are coming in, without producing results, without ensuring that the private sector is a party to these very important operational plans that the government seeks to follow through. It's not gonna actually dwell down to this level. Khuram Saab, I want your opinion now on the fact Faisal Saab has mentioned a very pertinent point. We are looking at 10 million, Faisal Saab, not 5 million. We have the target of 10 million youth that we have to upscale on the
Yeah,
technology
but
side of things.
sorry to say,
My
but but just to
question to you, Khuram Saab, yeah,
sorry to interrupt. See, 10
go ahead.
million, and my apologies, Khurram Sahib, I was just too into the numbers.
No worries, no worries, go ahead.
I
There's a
think
So
slight lag.
I'm just
I feel a
correcting
slight
a number.
lag
See,
from
you
Faisal
need
Saab.
to look at.
Yeah,
Hello, can you
you're
hear me
back,
now?
sir. We lost you. We lost you for
Yeah.
like 5 seconds
So
there.
my apologies for interrupting, but I just wanted to make a point over here. When we talk about skill development, or that skill development organizations, or the things that the government has done on technology front, 3.5 million approximately, or 4 million people have been trained since 2018, since the digital vision was
Yes,
created. Now, in last
absolutely.
4 years, 5 years time period, if we are able to achieve 3.5 million, and giving ourselves a target of adding another 5 million or x millions of skilled workforce into the system, it just looks like a theoretical number to me. I am not convinced, based on the track record, that maybe some miracle happens and we are able to achieve it. But this doesn't look practical.
I'll reserve my comments on it. I might be biased, having gone through the curriculum and having seen the rigor that these skills based qualifications and certifications are providing. I do interact with a lot of startups, and that's where, Khurram Saab, I wanted your inputs, because you're working with them directly as well. You're working with each tiers of startups, specifically those who are tech enabled and tech, they're working in the tech space. My question to you, sir, is that this question about skills, it's a very, very subjective term. Skills to you could mean something else, to Shoaib Saab, Faisal Saab would mean something completely else. There is a demand side, and then there is a supply side also, that the international customer base that we are exporting our services to is looking at. Do you think right now is about time that the government sits down and then also evaluate and put up into the operational planning, like Faisal was mentioning, that what those skills are and what should we inculcate in these youth that we have to train specifically?
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I think so. I agree with Faisal Saab in terms of any plan is as good as the level of execution that it eventually sees through. So, devil is in the detail. दो तीन चीज़ों पे मैं ज़रूर हाईलाइट कर दूंगा because as part of Pasha and being involved with the government over the last couple of years, I'm privy to a lot of hard work which has gone in by a lot of people, including Pasha, working closely with the Software Export Board as well as the Ministry of IT. और मैं उस पे खास तौर पे, since you've asked me to talk about the skills development, so there is one element which is of DG skills where there's a talk about upskilling a lot of people, millions of people. Then there is a discussion which is going on specifically to IT skill development. And I'll focus more on the IT skill development because that's where, especially from the export market perspective and even the local market, there is a lot of value which is going in. So currently, what is happening is that in Pakistan, the universities across the country are producing about 25,000 IT graduates in different disciplines of IT. Out of those, generally, it is claimed that 10% of those graduates are actually employable as they come out, which is a very small number. Hence the discussion about IT skill development. The numbers, by the way, which are being talked about, is about a million IT skill development of IT graduates, a million over 5 years time. The target for this year is about 50,000. Just wanted to give a bit of clarity. 50,000 graduates, IT graduates, to be upskilled. Now, interestingly enough, if you ask me how is it going to happen, and the point about do we really know what skills are needed so that people will be trained? So I'll just share something which has happened over last 1 year. So the Ministry of IT through the Software Export Board working closely with Pasha, we initiated the first of its kind of IT skill development program through which 4,000 fresh graduates or recently relatively fresh graduates were have gone through a boot camp training. So almost 70% of them have completed their trainings and are, I think, out of those 70%, a good almost 65 to 70% have been employed. So that's a positive sign that whatever skill development has resulted in jobs for them. So it was a very interesting concept where actually the government for the first time said instead of going to the universities, they actually came to the industry and asked the industry to determine, first of all, what kind of skills were needed. And we played an active role in carrying out surveys and getting feedback from the industry as to what are the kind of skills that are needed. And we broadly identified 6 lines or 6 skill set areas where the skill development was carried out for 4,000 graduates. And what has really happened is that since this program has been quite successful, it is now being the government has allocated funds. We have there is a wider allocation which has happened, out of which the exact allocation will subsequently be known. But the target is that now instead of 4,000 graduates, 50,000 fresh graduates, or relatively fresh graduates should be upskilled based on, again, the industry feedback, and those are the ones who will be utilized by the industry in Pakistan for the local market as well as for the exports. Because primarily in Pakistan, if you look at it, our exports, a lot of them are IT enabled services or professional services, and they're heavily dependent on the skilled labor force. And that's where we are going in. It's a long story, but I think what has happened is that there is a step which has been taken in the right direction. We're working very closely with the ministry and the Software Export Board, because they are one of the key stakeholders in ensuring the growth of exports. So that is happening. The dream to have 1 million or 5 million people trained will eventually happen, not in this budget, for sure. DG skills, yes, but the IT skills, the target is 50,000, and I think at least we're starting in the right direction. I'm looking at the glass which is half full. There are other areas, but I'm restricting my response to the question around the IT skills. The good thing, just a couple of things. I think one good thing is this 0.25% of final tax regime for IT exporters. I think in this budget it has been proposed because continuity was something missing, as Shoaib had mentioned. Last 3 years, three different type of regimes. So at least in this budget, they're proposing that at least for the next 3 years, this FTR should be made, consistent. And the second interesting thing is that while the IT exports had nothing to do with sales tax, still they had to fill in sales tax returns, which was, ease of doing business we're talking about. So what has been proposed is that those kind of requirements should be done with. So that there are other things, but I'll since you asked me to talk about IT skills, so I'm just restricting at this time. But I think it's a step in the right direction. Millions will come in later years, but at least if we can achieve this 50,000 target, it'll be great. It will mean that there is a direct potential input for exports, which will be available to companies, and it can have a positive impact in growing our exports.
Great, thank you so much, Karam Saab. I think very well explained. I have another question for you, and then I'll take Faisal and Shoaib's comments on this as well. So we're sitting right now approximately 2023 का जो हमारा tech export है business, that's roughly around $3 billion. Our next door neighbor is sitting on $245 billion. That's a huge jump. I'm not saying we're comparing apples and oranges, but what do you suggest to the government? Because we want this to actually go on to the main key stakeholders as well, the decision makers as well. But what do you think, in your opinion, is the way forward for us to bridge this gap a little bit, or just at least catch up? बिजनेस वहां से भी लोगों को मिल रहा है, यहाँ से भी मिल रहा है, आपस में पाकिस्तानी और इंडियन फ्रीलांसर्स ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस कोलैबोरेट भी कर रहे हैं बिजनेस के लिए. But how do we bridge the gap? What is it that India is doing right that maybe we can, piggyback on and see and get some best practices out of there and then seek support?
So I'll not talk about what India is doing right. I'll talk about more what we need to do. Um, and obviously, 345 billion reaching there is a long way off. But let's look at where we are and how we can increase. So I think there are two key things which need to happen. One is, you can't grow your exports if you do not have the right skill set. And primarily our exports, IT exports, are basically the implementation skills, the managed services, etc., which is heavily dependent on availability of skilled labor force. Because if they are there, you can only market them. So that's where we talked about moving with about training 50,000 or upskilling 50,000 IT resources, and I believe that's one step. The other important thing is that, and I think that's where this VC fund should come in handy. I agree with Faisal Saab. How it is implemented, how it is carried out, how it is rolled out is important. But that's where you will encourage organizations, because you make a lot more money in terms of developing IP and selling it or exporting it. So we primarily lag seriously behind that. We are more focused on selling the labor force, in terms of, I have 500 people, I can charge, $300 per day or $500 per day. If I have 1,000 people, I can charge, my business will multiply. But if you create IP, and that's where the VC fund and those kind of investments come in, then you're able to actually multiply. The multiplier effect would be much bigger, and in terms of, rather than depending upon the skill training. So both have to go hand in hand. The second most important thing is, I think, the amount of exports, IT exports from Pakistan is probably much bigger than what is reported. The numbers you have talking are the numbers which are coming through the official channels. And that's where I think government needs to, and we've been engaged with government and trying to work out with them, is to create an environment which can help ease of doing business in the country, in terms of allowing the exporters or the export proceeds to land in the country, which in some cases, we all know, we may deny it, is not happening today. It's being parked outside. And that's where government needs to probably, in terms of, take steps in terms of the taxation part, which I think they've started in the right direction. Second thing is around, the potentially looking at giving the holiday on, in terms of the dividends of the IT companies, and then, be allowing people the export proceeds which are coming in, allowing people to actually keep a significant portion of it in, and maintain it in a dollar account. That again is important, because these are some of the things where, at times you're not seeing the actual numbers coming in. And I'll give you a small example. It was I think, a great opportunity. Probably we've missed the bus. That most of the businesses have their offices, or parking their funds in UAE, and the UAE government announced 1st of July they're going to charge, but it used to be tax free, 9% corporate tax now. And it could have been a very interesting opportunity, where we would have incentivized companies to bring that money into Pakistan. We've seen the likes of Ireland and Portugal, etc., offering those tax-free facilities to organizations. So I think those are some of the things where, if government, since you asked about some of the suggestions, if the government can facilitate that ease of doing business, I think it will have a major impact in terms of supporting, whether it is freelancers, whether it is IT companies, supporting the growth of IT exports in the country, and more importantly, encouraging those export proceeds to be brought in through official channels and be recorded.
Great. Thank you so much, Sab. I was taking notes as well, and maybe we could do a roundup as well. Faisal, anything that you would like to add to this list, this bridging the gap in terms of increasing exports?
Yeah, of course. I think Khurram Saab has spoken very well about it, mentioned very important things. In fact, one good thing which I could see coming out of this budget is the declaration of technology or IT sector as part of the SME sector now. So they're proposing it that the benefits which generally SME sector gets, IT is also part of it, which means that they're going to be considered, similarly as other small and medium enterprises for access to finance, etc. But when you compare yourself with India, as you given your a very pertinent, comparative example of our neighbor, we are miles apart. I mean, we're way apart in terms of the innovation that is required in this sector. I mean, for innovation, you will need back. You have to go back to skill development or retention of brain within the country itself. So it all boils down to those basic things where innovation has to be the focus for the policymakers to promote generally across the economy, not just for technology sector, for in anything and everything. Yeah, technology will always have an advantage in innovation. We have to create environment where we can attract foreign investment. We have to bring in new capital into the economy, and to attract new capital you have to go outside Pakistan. When people come and start investing in Pakistan in the sector, um, we have to create, or let's say encourage entrepreneurship, which somewhat it is going to be done, because as I mentioned, that IT is not going to be part of the SME sector. So that part will be taken care of by the policymakers. Hopefully they execute these things in a similar fashion also. And the most fundamental thing is investing in education and training. I mean, we do not have to create IT graduates. We but need to certainly create coders. We certainly need to bring in, entrepreneurs into it. I mean, somebody does not have to be IT graduate to come up with a groundbreaking or very basic sort of a technology. I'll give you an example. I was part of one of the seminars recently, and it was in-person seminar, and without taking the name of the company, is one of the biggest call center sort of a company, which was actually fetching the getting business outsourced from the rest of the world into Pakistan. And in fact, India has gone tremendously ballistic about it. I mean, they were. I mean, it was shocking to know that they are struggling to get basic people into those call centers, where the only skill that they need is someone who can speak and understand English, basic English, and can operate a computer. This is the basic requirement. And when you go and talk to global companies to outsource their work into Pakistan, so they will not be asking you to set up a call center or set up some facility of 100 people or 1,000 people. You have to probably create an infrastructure for 10,000 people. And now these companies, the biggest companies in this sector, they struggle to get the right human resource, because they say we go and talk to 100 people, and probably we are able to get one or two. If you're lucky, we are able to get one or two individuals out of those 100 for these basic jobs that are out there. So for us to be able to attract business in large sums or in volumes, we have to create that infrastructure. We have to invest in our people. We have to bring in entrepreneurship into our culture. We have to get out of this sort of incentivizing special sectors, sort of a syndrome and mindset, and go across the board, sort of creating level playing field for any entrepreneur to come and start operating within Pakistan. So these are the fundamental things which probably are and I'm sure they are thinking about it,
Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
have to start executing as well.
No, I completely agree with you, Faisal Saab, and I think I'll also like to quote an example to you here. The skills part that both you and Khurram Saab was talking about before I move to you, Shoaib, is just to quote an example. So I was looking for an app development for my organization, and I put up a small post on LinkedIn that I'm looking for app developers. My mistake, I didn't mention Pakistan under the assumption that my post is going to be automatically shown to Pakistan. And here's some live data that I can share with you, that I got over 100 requests in one single day. And guess what? 99 were from India. So the AI generated tool that their kids were using had picked up my post, and they had picked up the hashtag opportunity, and they were the ones who were actually sending their pitch decks to me, spamming for sure. But my point in that was that they were keen enough to go after a business, even if it meant that it's a small, very small app that needed development. My frustration as somebody who works with enterprises is, and I completely agree with all of the discussion that's taking place, is that we have made our youth too comfortable also. sitting in nice fancy offices, giving them a nice culture of an incubation, not making them go through the grit that is needed. My frustration was that there was no discussion again on the payment gateway that we're still struggling with for the IT industry to thrive, right? So, Shoaib, my question to you is that बातें बिल्कुल हमने बहुत अच्छी कर ली, फैंसी कर ली, हमारे टारगेट्स बड़े अच्छे हैं, बहुत सारे लोगों को जो रीच आउट करना है. खुरम साहब मेंशन के ओके फाइन, नॉट डिजी बट आईटी स्किल्स आल्सो. मुझे तो लगता है कि जो बेसिक एक एंटरप्राइज रन करने का और एक प्राइसिंग सही करने का और एक मार्केटिंग सही करने का और अपनी सर्विसेज सही तरीके से बेचने का भी जो स्किल है वो भी बताना चाहिए. सो शोएब, व्हाट इज योर इनपुट्स इन दिस? And do you face challenges when you're also looking for young talented individual? I'm sure there are many who are working as part of your organization, but आपका सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज क्या इन एसेंस पे आता है? और पेमेंट गेटवेज का जरा बताएं कि ये कब तक हम इस प्रोसेस को थोड़ा सा स्ट्रीमलाइन कर सकते हैं. You're muted. You need to
Oh,
unmute.
thank you, Noel. So I think one of the things that you mentioned that for your app, right? You got applications from everywhere. I would say that doesn't happen for app. I mean, if I advertise on LinkedIn for a job or for even an internship, I get resumes from all over the world, right? I mean, their AI actually even picks that up, and so that happens. But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that is happening on the technical side of things, and I think there's still a lot of. We probably need to do it for another 5, 10 years because we haven't graduated from that aspect where our technical skills can are to a point where we need to move on to the next step immediately. But one of the things that holds us back when we go to the enterprise level are soft skills. IT is not just about IT skills, programming, coding, and all that. You need program managers, you need product managers, you need business analysts, you need pre-sales people, post-sales people, all of that, so you can create a complete package. I think that aspect, which comes a lot of the people that we have right now or talent, is just learning it on the job. But we need to create a track for them as well, because as these IT skills are filled up, this is the next level that will actually help us get into that IP that Faisal Saab mentioned and Puram Saab mentioned, that we need to develop that IP and be able to sell that IP, right? So I think we need to add those layers on top of that as well. Training our, people who are 3, 4, 5 years into their jobs. How do you actually interact with clients? How do you talk to them? How to do pre-sales? So those skills, project managers, product managers, developing training, those that need to be part of that skill as well. And I think you mentioned that our neighbor, right? They where we are. Let's say the 3 billion is the number that is transparent to everybody. Forgetting about what's in the black economy. If you want to 10x that, I think one thing is clear, that the government cannot do that. The industry has to do that, right? So, and the industry totally has that capability to do it. Where the government can play a role is actually create that ease of business. One of the examples that I will give, I think, a lot depends on, VC capital. If you look at our neighbor, a lot of VC capital goes into their startups, and they have unicorns and all of that. A lot of VC, we don't have that enabling environment of that ease of business. For example, money doesn't just need to come here. Money also needs to be repatriated out of Pakistan as well. So if VCs are going to invest in Pakistan, they need to be able to get the gains and then take it out as well. So there needs to be some framework around that where, the VCs who are investing in Pakistan, they can find a way to actually profit from it, so they can increase their investment as well, right? So that framework is missing. So this will encourage people, the big guys like the Amazons and the Googles, to open their offices here in Pakistan as well. I think that's one. And then the other thing where the government can definitely help is really improve the image of Pakistan. I mean, I cannot tell you enough times when I'm out talking to a client, I don't sell Techro Digital. I sell Pakistan first, because if they don't believe in Pakistan, it doesn't matter, what I do or what anybody else does. And I can give you examples. And simple thing, I'm sure if there's a Techno Digital in India, they would not ask them, what do you do if the light is out? Do you have backup power? What if the internet, how, internet connectivity? How's the internet connectivity? What is the backup that plan that you have? What happens if there's and these are real questions that people ask us. And sometimes, they say, what, we don't want to take that risk. It's too, so I think consistency of continuity, like Puram Saab mentioned, right? Continuity of policy and regime, plus enabling an environment, improve the image of Pakistan, bring some stability to Pakistan, improve the infrastructure. All we require are skilled people, laptops, human brain, power, internet. Just make sure that that is available to us. And I think the industry can do a lot when we have those stability factors there to really help increase. And one last thing, I think Faisal Saab mentioned the SME status. So that is something I am a little confused about, because when I look at it, I don't see. I'm glad that the government is trying to classify this as a small medium industry, but I don't see how that helps us, because most of the incentives, are already with the IT companies already. So on top of that, what does SME status do, other than maybe, I don't know, put us into a bracket where the IT industry might not want to be in. Uh, you know, uh, I think that is something I'm still undecided if that's a good thing or a bad thing, that they're trying to lump IT industry along with maybe a textile industry or somebody else, and then try to impose that framework onto the IT industry.
Ji, Khurram Saab, please go ahead.
Gee, so Shweb, what it does is just give you a very quick clarity on this. There are certain benefits or certain privileges for SME industry in terms of taxation and other things. So by IT, this was a challenge that the SME sector, current definition of sector, did not include IT companies. So now the small and medium IT companies can take advantages of those benefits which are extended to SME sector. So that's where the benefit is for those SME companies, IT companies, which were currently not labeled as SME industry. So that's where the benefit for those smaller companies is. Just wanted to
Okay.
clarify.
And
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
just to add a direct
Yes.
benefit, which is like now the access of finance, like I mentioned, is easy because the banks will be incentivized in a way to lend to this sector, just like they do it to the rest of the SME sector, and not just the banks, any other FI as well, who's available to a DFI and FI, who's in the lending business, can consider SME sector. So this will certainly help the access to finance problem to this sector. If someone needs it, this can become a good avenue for the lending institutions to consider as well.
Great. Gentlemen, thank you so much. We started off by saying that maybe we'll have a 20, 25 minutes discussion, but the inputs were so useful. I believe that we went on with the 45 minutes mark. But thank you so much for this very, I think, overall a positive discussion on the tech industry and what it holds for us. The recording of this particular webinar is going to be made available on the CxO Global Forum platforms. Also, I think, just in order to conclude, I think we spoke a lot about ease of doing business, finding the right skill set and what it means in terms of both technical and the professional skills that are needed by individuals. I think the industry has been.
I guess she got disconnected.
Okay. No, thank you for Faisal Saab and Khurram Saab explaining that. I was a little unclear what does that actually help me do as an SME. And I think anything that is good, step that helps maybe for people who are struggling with finance, that's a good step as well.
Sure. Just since we're talking about ease of finance, one big challenge which IT companies have, and I've been right now talking to a lot of financial institutions to find a way, is that when you talk about manufacturing sector, retail, they have their produce, they have their plant, their machinery, their shops, or their inventory to pledge and get finances against. IT sector has a bit of a challenge where we really do not have anything to pledge to gain finances, and the
Collateral, yeah.
so without collateral, the financial institutions, and they are kind of restricted by the state bank policies to not lend. And that's where something I'm trying to champion the cause with a lot of financial institutions and even state bank to say how we could create some sort of product, some sort of lending product which can actually help our IT companies, especially the small and medium enterprises, in terms of getting finances which are much needed to scale.
Apologies, I got kicked out of the webinar, the stream, for some odd reason. But
Correct.
thank you so much.
Are
I
we
wanted to
still
thank.
live? I think
Yes, we
we
are.
are live,
Yes,
but
yes, we are. So thank you so much, everybody. I was just
but
doing a
without
quick
a
round.
moderator. We're live without the moderator right now. Oh,
No,
she's back.
I'm back. Yes. Just wanted to quickly do a thank you and a round of conclusion. We're talking about the right skill set that is needed by these youngsters that are going to be the future of the industry. A lot of work on the government's end in terms of putting up an operational plan that puts things into execution. Extremely important. I think the collaboration needs to be there. There need to be more public-private partnership agreements in place so that the local industries can be pushed up to do things which are more innovative. So overall, a positive impact on the budget. We look forward now to the implementation and the execution and seeing what more IPs can come out so that the VC funds can also be utilized effectively. Again, a huge portfolio that needs to be fulfilled in terms of the exports for the industry. So I think those of you who are joining us on this particular platform, we're largely 12,000 members under the CxO global platform as well. I think these 12,000 needs to, also come on the same page and look at ways in which we can create a conducive, very competitive, but very good competitive culture in which we can learn from the best practices of each other and contribute to the economy of the country. Gentlemen, thank you so much, Shoaib Saab, Faisal Saab, and Khurram Saab. This has been a really insightful discussion. I look forward to having this discussion with you guys, again at another platform. Thank you to the CxO Global team for having all of us over. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you, G. It was
Thank
a
you.
pleasure.
Thank
Salam
you,
alaikum.
everyone. Thank you.